You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonough. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Communications Business Advisor podcast. I have a fun guest today, Laura Duda, who is, and I might mess this up, Laura, so feel free to correct me. Laura is the Senior Vice President and Chief Communications Officer at Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. Is that right?
The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company.
All right. Can we call it Goodyear for shorthand, or will I get in trouble?
Okay.
All right, Goodyear. So, you know that we're doing this whole Path to CCO Plus series. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do is, really my vision for the field is to elevate our entire field and the people in it. And that means we need to really learn from the folks that are in those chief communications officer roles that so many want to pave and their way towards, and rather than weed whacking our way through, which is what it feels like right now, because chief communications officers aren't necessarily a standard role in many organizations, not like, legal or, a chief human resources officer might be. So I'd really love to get your thoughts on the path to that place. But let's start a little bit with, what does it mean to be a chief communications officer at Goodyear, and what does that encompass? What roles or what responsibilities, what business areas do you cover?
Yeah. So Tara, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited. And that's a very worthy goal, to help elevate our field and help people see the path to a job like mine, which is a lot of fun and a lot of challenge, like all of these types of jobs. But at Goodyear, this is a CEO direct report. So I'm on the senior leadership team. That isn't the case everywhere. I'm really glad it is here, because it gives our very special function a seat at the table and a voice in things that happen. What that means from a functional perspective is I lead all internal and external communications. So I think your listeners are probably familiar with all of the different sub-functions that go in those, but sometimes things connect with communications and sometimes they connect with marketing. So just to explain, I have all internal communications, all media relations. Social media is within my group, although that is somewhat co-owned with our chief marketing officer. We have a partnership on that. I also have sponsorships and partnerships for activations, which is also closely connected to marketing, but sits in my group, and licensed products, as well as our presence on the web, as well as our community engagement and philanthropy efforts. And government relations, while not part of communications, is a matrix report to our team. So I have the chief officer in government relations is also part of my leadership team, although reporting to our general counsel. So it covers a lot. And also really fun part of my job that I can't promise anyone else will ever have in the history of other companies, but the Goodyear blimps report to me as well.
I was just going to say, I cannot wait for this buildup. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't even know any other company that has a blimp. So
Nope. I think we are one of the last ones standing if you look at the size of what we have. And it's, like I said, it's not something anyone else will ever be able to do. It's very unique to this role. And it's been an absolute pleasure and an exciting part of my job to work with the airships program.
That's really fun. An interesting thing to have on your resume. So tell us a little bit about the size of your team and how you structure it. Like, you already shared that you report to the CEO. We'd also love to know, has it always been this way, or did that change over time?
I think it's for the recordable history at Goodyear, it has been that way. So it's been a seat at the table. And I have worked in this role at this level for two different CEOs. I'm in sort of year two with I won't call him new anymore because he's been here for 2 years, but we have a CEO who joined the prior CEO that I worked for about, I don't know, I think 5 or more years. He had been in that job for 14 years. So he was a very long-serving CEO. And as far as that, my team is, if you look at everyone in the system that rolls up to me in the HR system. There are two ways to look at this. One is
Right.
the real organization, which is are the ones that report to me, or I guess the validated in the HR system organization. But then I also have a lot of other people who contribute to the function, and I rather than considering them a shadow and keeping them out of the function, I kind of try to bring them in. But if you look at
Mm,
just that HR system view, it's about 150 associates, as we call ourselves, and that includes people based. We serve pretty much every country in the world where we are legally allowed to serve. So we sell tires, make tires just about every corner of the earth. And I have teams in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, in the Asia Pacific region, in North, Central, and South America. So all of those together, and then a global team that serves as centers of excellence and drives a overarching corporate narrative for the company. So we have a
hmm.
lot of of I think that's a pretty good sized team. It's never enough. Like you're not going to have anyone on this show or anyone listening that ever feels like they have enough resources.
Or too
But
many.
yeah,
No
no,
one is going to
there's
say, I
never.
have too many people.
No,
I don't
that's
know what
just
to
not
do with.
something that we say. And we are the smallest. We are the smallest function within Goodyear. And I think that's been true of every company. We're kind of this small function that is sometimes dependent on the CEO's, often dependent on the CEO's vision for what that function should be doing, co-created with the chief
Mm,
communications officer, hopefully. But very often it is really just dependent on how the company sees the function and the utility of it.
right. Still, I think that there's many people who are salivating at the idea of 150 associates
I
alone,
know.
let
I
alone the
know.
matrixed folks.
If you look at just it sounds like a lot, but let's say you're in Poland and you're one person for the entire country. That doesn't feel like a lot.
Oh, I've been
So
there.
it's just a lot of it seems like a lot, but it's never enough somehow.
No, I mean that in a we should all have 150 people, and I've been there, not in Poland, but I have had global functions that I've run where it's one person in Italy and one person
Yeah,
in France, and also how they view what they do in comms is very different from what you might do in comms in a different region or country.
very, very true.
And I'm really intrigued. I'd love to hear one thing we haven't really explored a lot is the matrix
Mhm.
function. I come from worlds of matrix involvement. And I think what you said is kind of critical because there's a very different, I guess I'll just say vibe when you're talking about a shadow communicator versus a matrixed reporting structure where it's sort of like these people are connected in
Yeah.
to the central function, whether it's quote unquote official or not. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts about what people need to learn when they're running a matrixed function.
So I'm really proud of my team. We sort of rebuilt this function when I took this job in what year did I take? 2019. So we've really worked, I would say we've had a pretty consistent leadership team. A member or two has swapped out, but we've had a pretty consistent team and we've rebuilt it once and now we've rebuilt it twice because our CEO, the prior CEO ran the company sort of almost like a regional company. So
Mhm.
different P&L for different regions. This CEO, my current boss, he wants us to be global. And the logic makes a lot of sense to me. Like, why would you do something four or maybe five different ways when you can do it one way and then save efficiency on that and then spend your time on matters that are probably a lot more exciting and interesting. So, with regard to Matrix, we started when I took this job, the original job, most of my team, all the regional people were Matrix. They did not
Mm,
report to me in the system. I didn't have any insight over their compensation. I didn't have any insight into their performance ratings, but still we had to work together. And I think that was the really important thing was we would work together regardless of whether we were matrixed. I think that now everyone reports directly to me, but I certainly hope that the regional leaders and others that they matrix into or report to do not feel that difference. They don't feel like
mhm.
there's sort of two bosses warring over the work product. The way I see it, I should be working with my peers to resolve any differences so that we allow our communicators to do what they do and they aren't caught up in some sort of turf war. So I guess
Mhm.
I've never wanted anyone to feel like it was a matrix. I'd rather they, even though there's some technical differences, I really want them to feel like they're part of my team.
Mm.
Another great example is in our manufacturing plants, we have in some cases communicators. In some cases, we have a hybrid of an HR person and a communicator when it's a small plant. And I've always just invited these people to our town halls. I've included these people in our distributions even if I didn't hire them, even if they reported to manufacturing, not to me. I never wanted them to feel that way. I feel like we can get more and better work done if we work as one team, and I'm willing to do what it takes to facilitate that, even if my preference would be to have more of a hardline reporting relationship with them.
Well, I'm sure that that helps you also, though, by creating that inclusive approach. It helps once you do have that direct line reporting relationship, because people do see you as someone that's there as their champion rather than someone who's a competitor. So I think that's like a critical tip for people to navigate this, like what some might call the politics of leadership in a comms function. Bring people in, bring people in. I think I did a podcast episode once about, how you don't hate the shadow communicator people.
Mm-mm.
You might hate the structure in which things are set up, but you actually, if you bring the shadow communicator in and you engage them and you make them feel like they're part of something bigger, then you're more likely to win fans and actually get more done for the organization, which is the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, I think you're creating community. You're creating a community
Hmm.
of people who are engaged in similar work. And oftentimes these people, if they are, like, for example, if the IT department decided it needed a communicator to focus entirely on some aspect of IT and I don't have the resources to do that, I would not leave that person out in the cold. I would try to create that community because in many cases, those functions don't know what to do with these people. Like they don't know
Um,
what to do with us.
I feel like you're giving the number one example of where communications exists outside of a central communications function, which is IT is typically the first org
Yeah.
to go
And
higher.
the way I see it is, the way I say it even is our budget, despite the fact that some people may say, wow, she has a lot of people or she has this, in the scheme of things within my company, my budget is, I call it the change in the sofa cushions of the company's budget. It's not material. So whereas a budget like information technology, that's pretty big, and you can have some extra people and no one notices. If I had extra people, it would be obvious because in the scale of my function, that would stand out. So I don't see it happening too much, and I work really hard with my peers to have the relationships that I can say, what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? How do we do that? It's not about you having a communicator. It's about your goals for your function or your business and how we need to staff to support them.
Right. Yeah, I call it partnering with them so that we can all achieve the goals for the organization.
Hmm.
And that makes a ton of sense. You said change in the cushions. I call it the rounding error. It's
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
this like
exactly.
it's this like mental game we must play with ourselves where we start from a position of like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to have so many people, when in reality we should be looking at it as, well, the number of people I have or the number of resources I have or the budget I have is pales in
Yeah.
comparison to every other area or every other function in this business. So why not? Why shouldn't I have 150 people? And so I'd love to really challenge all of us on that mindset as well. And I loved how you talked about this. Well, yes, but yes, I have 150, and that may seem large in comparison to others in communications. However, when you look at all of the things that we do, and all of the things that we do as a company, then really, to your point, it's never enough. So that's really helpful. Also thinking about the matrix structure and the inclusion vibe, bring everybody in, make them feel connected, make them part of that community. think that's a critical point for people who may be struggling with the concept of matrix or new to the matrix idea. Maybe folks that are just promoted into that place and they're saying, but it would work so much better, or trying to champion a change without really pointing out what the change means and why it would work better.
Well, and I'm a big advocate of presume positive intent. I don't presume these people were just happy to get a job at Goodyear and they're going to try to do good work. I'm going to assume that going in. So they're not out to get us. They're not out to, and they probably want that community as much as we do. So that's what we'll try to create. And I believe the outcomes will be better because of it.
Yes. You sound, this is actually, that's actually one of the things that I tell clients that I'm working with. Always assume positive intent is the first goal and curiosity is valued. Those are two goals that I set with anyone that I work with.
Those are two good ones.
And so, thank you. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you got to your role, like what your career path was before Goodyear, and then how you got into the role that you're in now.
So it's probably, Tara, it's probably worth going back to my first supervisory assignment at my first electric utility, and 20 years of my career was spent in the electric energy, the utility sector, we'll
Hmm.
call it. I joined as sort of a Marcom writer, the most junior level you could join, the first utility that I joined. And I never wanted to supervise people. I wanted to be the best writer I could be. I went to school for writing. That was all I ever wanted to do. That was all I aspired to. And then this is leading into a series of things that my entire career has happened almost by accident or provenance or whatever you want to call it. A job opened up to supervise others, and I was terrified that this other person would get it, and I didn't enjoy working with this other person. So I put my name in and I got it. And it has started a journey of learning that I enjoy getting results through a team and with a team more than I enjoyed being the best writer or getting results by myself. And I think this is for your listeners who are hoping to have a senior level job. That's a transition they will have to make. You have to make that trade-off. It's no longer about you, it's about the team, and it's a different set of skills that probably don't come natural, that you have to learn through trial and error and formal learning if that's available. But that was thing one. Thing two, so I eventually became you'd call it chief communications officer at that utility in Tampa. At the time, director was the most senior level. I reported to the CEO. I led a 22-person team, which felt pretty darn big at the time, when I received a cold call from an executive headhunter who was representing the largest utility in the country with a job in Chicago, and asked if I wanted to come be a VP there. And I said, well, I like Chicago. I have a cousin there. And I wasn't really trying to leave, but this happened. And I went and I worked for a company called Exelon in Chicago. And I worked there. That's where I met one of your prior podcast guests, Judy Rader. We worked together.
Yes.
But I worked there for, almost a decade. And then I became aware that job, I guess I'd say in all honesty, I kind of realized the top job wasn't in my future. Like
Mm.
I had most of the responsibility of communications, but I was working for a CEO who kind of believed that if you told a reporter ABC, the resulting story would be ABC. And it was very hard to convince otherwise. So I just think through a variety of things, our styles weren't aligned. I wasn't going to get that job. And so I decided to look at other things, and I decided to look outside of energy because I was afraid if I did another utility job, that would be all I'd ever do.
Mm.
So a job came across my desk, again, executive headhunter, and it was tires. So I say I was lured by the glamour of the tire business, which checked two boxes for me, which with your listeners will probably understand. You kind of have to say, what do I want with my next job? It's not just running from something, it's what are you running
Mm.
to? And for me, I wanted to work for a company with a consumer-facing brand, electric utilities. They have a little bit of that, but it's really all about promoting energy conservation and things like that. I wanted a real consumer-facing brand, and I wanted something that would allow me to work globally. So I
Mm.
came to Goodyear and had a very forgettable job for about 6 months. I hated it was a corporate job. I hated it. It
Mm.
became kind of, I should have probably asked more questions because it became sort of like everything the SVP and CCO didn't want to do became my job. And I did
Mm.
that for about 6 months, miserable, because I also will tell people when you switch jobs after you've been somewhere a while, it's jarring because you go from being this credible entity that can make things happen to not knowing where the restrooms are and how to make a copy of anything, or it's very, very hard. So that was a hard 6 months, but then I guess I made an impression on the people in our Americas business, which was North America, Central America, South America, and I went to run communications for there, which was more of a real job, and it enabled me to prove myself in a way that when the CCO job came available, it was mine. So I did that for about 4 years, and then I've been in this seat since early 19.
Nice. I think
Yeah,
a lot of people would be really interested in being a fly on the wall between that 6 month time frame and that.
it was awful.
um yeah, I mean, so, and that's actually something that I think a lot of people forget is that your role can change in a minute at the same company, and also same circumstances. The same people can be in positions, but your position and who you work with can change.
It moves fast, right? And I was like, I don't think I can do this another 6 months. And then this happened. This
Mm.
other job happened, and it happened, and it was known to be a difficult business to fit into, but they had had two people leave in fairly rapid succession in the role, and they were
Hmm.
very anxious to make it work. So they tried extra hard, and I tried extra hard, and it worked great. But I
Yeah,
think that that's true. And I think sometimes the people that are undermining intentionally or unintentionally what you're trying to achieve, they will move on or they will be gone or they will change jobs. And it's a very fluid environment in business, and especially the larger the business. Things can and do change. So
right.
while I think I would have found it hard to stay in that particular job, things changed. And now, here I am.
Well, we love that you're here. Um, So I've been talking a lot about authority so far this year. I named it as every year I name a communicator's word of the year. And this year I've been talking about authority and, how you go from building a function where you're shaping messaging into shaping decision making. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you see authority building in the comms function and what advice you have for people in our field to build
So,
authority.
yeah, that's a great question. So I think that when you look at the structure of the function, you are applying for a big job for CCO, and CCO can
Mhm.
be applied outside of the senior level. Like as long as you're the most senior person with communications in your title, you can be CCO. That's my
Right.
understanding of how it works. But I think in a CEO reporting situation, it's infinitely easier to have that
Mhm.
because you're in the room where the decisions are being made. You have a voice, you understand. What I always say about communications is the unique thing about our function, the absolutely unique thing is we alone think about all of the stakeholders. We alone.
Mhm.
Everyone else is in this narrow window of their stakeholders, like whether it's the legal department and possible counterparties in a lawsuit, or whether it's finance and investors, whether it's human resources and employees. All of those groups have kind of one stakeholder group. We look across all of them and identify where benefiting one can undermine another, and how you talk matters, and how you speak and how you present yourself matters to these groups. So I think that that's the unique perspective that I am able to bring, not from my own brain, but from the brains of my team, right? They're out there in the field with customers, with consumers, with suppliers, with all sorts of government officials. So I bring what I know from working with my team to those discussions, and I believe it helps inform decision making.
Mm.
So that's authority. It's not, I'm telling you it needs to be this. It's not
Right.
ever probably a communications. Probably, I hate to disappoint your listeners, but it's probably never going to be a mandate from you that makes
Mhm.
corporate policy. You
Right.
will have insight into it, input into it, but
Mhm.
and a voice, but that's kind of
What it is. It's kind of
what it
like
is.
being a co-author of a decision. You're
Yeah.
not the CEO making the final call, but your voice at the table is just as critical as legal, as HR, as, whatever. And that's the building authority piece. I think that I don't want to confuse it as like, it's more carrot than it is stick. Authority is not something that we should be afraid of. It's something that we need to lean into.
And in discrete policy matters, we do have authority. Like one of our absolute no-goes is our rules is no one except my team may speak to the press. So
Right,
that's a type of authority, but it's more like in that policy procedure vein.
right,
Ultimately, our CEO has the authority, and I may weigh into a decision that's being made with my perspective from my knowledge of stakeholders and our corporate reputation, which I have a unique relationship to as the chief communications officer. But the decision may be not what I was advocating for, and I have to then, if I have expressed myself and in a decision that I can live with, I have to live with it and I have to support it and I have to do my part to make it so.
right. It's having that voice, knowing that you're being listened to, that they respect your counsel, and then moving forward regardless. So it's that, but I think people confuse when I say, are you a communications business advisor? People confuse that with, well, yeah, I shape the messaging. I even sometimes doing what I call editing a business decision, which is like, we're going to do this. And it's sort of like, well, yes, but let's make this slight adjustment. Whereas in comms, if you truly have that voice at the table, not just the seat, then you're shaping the decision alongside your peers, and your voice is really respected and admired. It's a difference between having a voice at the table because you're invited and being required there because they can't move forward without your input. And that's really what I think that is the ultimate goal for communicators, regardless of title or skill set.
And Tara, I think I'd just say, having been at this a while, that doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen.
Mhm.
I mean, I think there are probably some unique circumstances in which a CCO is always a requirement, but that's never happened. I mean, I feel that I need to earn it pretty much every day, and I've
Mm.
been here a while.
Well, I did state it's a vision for our
Yeah.
field and not necessarily a reality
Yeah, let's
yet.
make it so.
But make it, 20 years ago, there wasn't always a CCO at so many companies that there are today. So it's sort of like let's look at the vision, let's set the vision, and then
Yeah.
let's start building towards that authority. I'd love to hear too, because I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time. What skills do you think are critical for people at your level outside of, generally knowing communications and being smart enough to be dangerous with running the function from an area of comms expertise?
So, business skill.
Hmm.
I am in the unique position of having two master's degrees, not unique, but unusual. I have a master's in mass comm and I have an MBA, and no one has ever cared about my master's in mass comm, but the MBA for a while got me, it's been quite a while since I got it, but it's sort of new level of respect. So I think when you can show that you don't need a formal degree to do this, but when you can pay attention, be curious, back to your other word, be curious and learn the business and speak with a knowledge of the business. I think business skill, like
Mm,
that is required because if you all you can do is speak about communications and publicity opportunities and crisis, and that doesn't get it. I think you really need to be able to understand the business. So that's thing one. The second thing, I don't think it's a skill. I think it's a trait that you have to nurture, and that's humility. And that is because by the time most of your listeners get to my level, including me when I got to my level, the skills that are important and becoming more important are not things that you grew up with. So
mm,
I am 56 years old. So I went to college with a typewriter, left with a computer. I did not grow up. We did not have cell phones. We did not have the internet. We did not have those things. So I'm not a digital native. I am very fluent in computers and the internet and all those things now, but not like someone who grew up with it. And I have people in my team who are absolute digital natives and who run our social platforms and who pick up on trends that are out there. And some of our like our if your listeners aren't following our blimp channels on social, they really should because
Oh,
they have many viral moments. And I promise you, I could not come up with a one of those. There's no way. So I think what I would advise is maintaining that sense of humility because by the time you get to this seat right here that I'm in, there's generations of people who know things that you don't know. And you have to put guardrails in place, but trust them, have them, learn from them. But you have to have the humility to know that you do not have all the answers with emerging technologies. That's just not what most of us are at. That's not where we're
yeah,
at my stage.
that's good advice. If there's one thing consistent in this field, especially right now in this environment we're in, it's change, right?
Mhm.
Changing environment, changing politics, changing technologies. With all of that in mind, what do you see as the top challenges and opportunities in our field?
I think that, I would be remiss if I didn't say that AI is
Mm-hmm.
changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the internet or social media when they came about. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think the mandate for us is to grab a hold of it and use it rather than being its victim, which I think a lot of communicators will think, oh, it could do my job. No, it can't do your job. It needs
Mm.
you, but it could enable you to do more of your job. Like you could do more with this tool. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
tool for you to use, just like the other things. So I think AI is something that people should be very mindful of and keep up with. And I do as much as I can, but probably not as much as the people that work for me. Now, I do say when someone brings me something that was very clearly AI off,
AI.
I call them out on it because it has a specific voice
Mm-hmm.
and you can, if you've been doing this as long as I have, you can kind of hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's thing one. Thing two is I think the world is so volatile and uncertain, especially when you're operating globally and you look at everything going on around the world. I think it's almost impossible to have a fully fledged crisis communication plan addressing all the things that could happen. We've
True.
had some quite unexpected things happen over the past few years since I've been in this job. And I think that prioritization is, scanning the waterfront, using the tools that are available to you to understand you know, what are the likely things to happen and be prepared for those. But I think it's just a wild world out there. And I say this because we had a very difficult time period a few years ago with an administration. And this was the learning for me. When I started doing this, when I worked back at that first utility job years and years ago, we would raise rates or we would put in infrastructure. Nobody liked either one. And I would have to come in, get on TV and explain why. And
Mm-hmm.
so the game then, the objective then was to make sure people understood you, to make sure your message was clear, to make sure it was heard, to clear things up, to clear up misunderstanding. The world is so polarized right now, and not even two polls would be great. It's like millions of polls out there that are all over the place. And I think that when we experience this very catastrophic crisis situation, no one wanted to hear us explain ourselves. They just wanted to tell us how much they hated us. So it's
Mm.
almost like the objective has become get off stage as soon as you can. It's
Mm.
not, it's no longer, I mean, perhaps it's make sure your story is available for anyone who wants to learn, but I feel like the world is especially online world hiding behind a screen. Everyone's waiting to, you know, take issue with something and everyone's looking to be angry at something. And it's very sad, it's very sad that that's how it is, but civil discourse seems to have seems to have been gone a while ago.
Yeah, farewell to that. And I feel you on this as the head of comms for a known health insurance company. Same, and even back then it was all about how much they hate us too. Um, even then. But also you kind of merged two things, I think, there also, which I'm going to talk about soon, which is The AI and this environment and having, a very thorough crisis comms plan is near impossible. That would cover every scenario. And then there's this third piece, which is like the intersection, which is AI creating crisis situations like the Cracker Barrel situation where it was sort of, bots essentially changed people's minds and shaped people's
Right.
minds before and Cracker Barrel responded before it was sort of, oh, people actually aren't really upset by this change. It's bots. And I've since seen this happen to clients that I've been working with and warning that this may happen. And so, sort of, the old rules of crisis aren't necessarily the same rules today.
Absolutely not. You're correct.
And this goes to your other thing of like keep the other people, the younger people that might have a different entire perspective on it, even though they might not have crisis training or experience, they might have really great insight that we vets can consider as we think about what the appropriate next step is.
And one thing we didn't talk about, Tara, but I'm sure you also agree, like being data driven with
Oh, yeah.
response is so important because I think many of us, CEOs included, might see an angry comment and if I could tell you how many times someone starts saying something's gone viral without really understanding what that means, and it just means two people said something mean. And
Yeah, we don't
if I
like
had,
it.
I'd be wealthy if I had like $1 for every time
Mm,
something like that happened. So we try to be very data driven in our listening and say, you know, it's this many comments. This does not a groundswell make.
mhm.
Let's give it another beat before we respond. So I think it's being measured and data driven and not overreacting because nobody likes, despite the fact that we're in this society where everyone likes poking at others, we don't like to be poked still. So
Mhm.
we just want to make sure that the response fits the situation.
Yeah, 100% hard agree on that. And data can get, even if you know inherently, based on your experience and knowledge, that this is not a viral moment, the data can convince other people who are outside of your field. And that goes with everything, really, whether you're making a case for something or you're fighting against something. Use data, use data, use data. Measurement is your friend.
Yes.
Okay, I have one last question and then we'll close up.
Okay.
What advice do you have for people in our field that want to grow into this field? Let's say they're at that like director level right now and they want to keep going. Maybe they feel a little stuck.
So I think just you first look at yourself. Have you done everything you can do to get yourself unstuck? Are you showing up in the right way? Are you presenting yourself as ready for what's next? Are you asking for projects that would let you demonstrate that you can be ready for what's next? And that, I think, starting there is, how do you show up every day?
Hmm.
Because sometimes, even today, people default to, well, I've been here a long time without a promotion. It's time for me to get promoted. No,
Yeah.
not so. Being promoted requires like something beyond. Like it's like you're demonstrating ability to do something beyond what you're doing. And I think so starting with yourself, like just really having that conversation about how you show up every day and showing up, you know, I think that every opportunity that's come my way may not be this way for everyone, but there's a little bit of right place, right time.
Hmm.
Like you could be so ready and the opportunity might not open up. It's like the situation has to be there and you have to be ready and there's many variables. But starting with yourself and making sure you're showing up in the right way is really important. And I hope, would hold myself to this as well. And then beyond that, I think that just once you show up that way, see how the environment reacts to you, the environment that you're in. Is your boss, do you work for someone who is willing to give you that visibility, those opportunities, who is willing to help coach you, give you a mentor, do the things that you think you need to do to develop in an executive sense? So that's thing too. Do you work in that type of environment? And if you don't, and you're ready, and you feel like you've done everything you can do, it may be time to look for something else. I mean, I've
Right.
done that multiple times. Once because I had a big opportunity handed to me that maybe I was ready for it, maybe I wasn't, but I took it and I made the most of it. And another time because I didn't feel like I was going to be able to get another opportunity. And there are many reasons, but I think start with yourself and then proceed accordingly to evaluate whether the environment, be patient, but allow the environment to show you if it's going to
Yeah, they'll
that
tell you.
message.
It will show. They won't say outright. Well, they have said it actually in the past to a client of mine. We won't ever promote you beyond this level because this is the business need level that we have identified. We haven't identified a business need higher than, say, director.
And that's a structural issue, right?
Right.
No amount of you showing you got the right stuff for a level up is going to make them change their mind unless you show a business case for that. Like
Right.
that costs them more money. If they can be perfectly satisfied with someone at the level you're at now,
Yep.
then it's probably not
Then
going to happen.
you got to look elsewhere if you want to continue to grow. And so I 100% agree with everything you said. Look at yourself. I also think outside counsel can help. Your mentor, your coach, your somebody that's outside of the jar that you're in that can see things that maybe you can't see and give you some suggestions that can help you decipher what's true, how can you truly get off the carousel or the merry-go-round that you're on right now.
And sometimes they can give you that kick in the pants that you need because I remember our head of government affairs, not in my group, she was in our DC office when I had only been in my hometown of Tampa, Florida, my whole career, and I had been fairly successful there. When this job came up in Chicago, I was like, wow, all the way to that's crazy. I never thought about that. And she said, you need to do it. She's like, you need to do it. You can see that there's a world out there. Most of these people can't see that. So you need
Mhm.
to do it. And it changed my life. And I needed that kick in the pants because none of the people immediately surrounding me, they would have thought it was crazy.
Yeah, I can say definite major career movements in my career have been definitely met with some skepticism by some. And yet here I am 30 years in and doing great in my view. Never been more successful in my career. And I've had some pretty successful moments. So really trust yourself as well in your gut on what feels like the right next step. Okay, this has been wonderful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for taking time with us, Laura. And until the next time, everyone, keep advising, always keep advising. If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out TaraMcDonough.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What's one major impact Raise the Tide has had on you?
It's so important to have community across any part of our lives, and that's one way that Raise the Tide has had a major impact for me.
I'm at a time in my career where I'm looking to grow both from a business advisor and personally. And what I will say is I'm not necessarily getting what I need in terms of coaching and growth internally. And that's where Raise the Tide comes in.
Raise the Tide has given me the confidence to go and advocate for myself and never allow status quo and be always pushing for more and knowing your value and your worth and not being afraid to advocate for that.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to TaraMcDonough.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships.
but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry.